On this week's episode of Inside Outside Innovation, Robyn and I talk about the human skills needed to adapt to AI, how YouTube is changing the media landscape, and how we might just be becoming lesser apes. Let's get started. Inside Outside Innovation is the podcast to help innovation leaders navigate what's next. Each week, we'll give you a front row seat into what it takes to grow and thrive in a world of hyper uncertainty and accelerating change. Join me, Brian Ardinger, and Mile Zero's Robyn Bolton as we discuss the latest tools, tactics, and trends for creating innovations with impact. Let's get started. Welcome to another episode of Inside Outside Innovation. I'm your host, Brian Ardinger, and with me I have Robyn Bolton from Mile Zero. Welcome, Robyn.
Thank you. Great to be here, Brian.
Let's dive in. We've got a lot of things on our plate. A lot of things are happening. We've got a number of articles we wanted to discuss of things that we're seeing out there in the world. The first one I wanted to call people's attention to was from Shane Snow. If you're longtime listeners, you may have seen Shane on our podcast episode 104 when he had another book coming out. His latest article is The Human Skills That Will Help Us Adapt to AI and Not Die.
Not that things are bleak or anything, but yeah.
Exactly. So Shane is a pretty talented thinker. His article sets the stage with comparing AI to what happened in early Tang Dynasty and China when they discovered gunpowder. And the fact that this gunpowder innovation changed the world in many different ways and democratized the peasants to be able to take over the emperor and everything else. That innovation quickly moved around the world, and it changed to the point where you either had to adapt to this and or die. And he talks a little bit about how that can be a parable to what we're seeing in today's world of AI.
Especially interesting his characterization of the speed and the speed of adoption and kind of saying, okay, well, the Chinese had gunpowder first. Why didn't they take over the world? And it's basically because very, very quickly Europe and the rest of Asia and adopted gunpowder. And so we're seeing that now is like every company is racing to adopt AI. I also just have to think like, yeah, but some people probably adopted gunpowder and didn't know what they were doing and blew their faces off. So there's also that risk, but it was an interesting, certainly parallel to people are moving fast to adopt AI, to claim expertise in AI, to claim what AI can do. And there's good reason for folks to adopt it, but there's also risks along the way, and we have to be eyes wide open about it.
And I think he talks, a lot about the fact that it's not necessarily the technology itself that makes the changes. It's how we adapt to the technology and what gives us an advantage are inherently human characteristics, not the technology itself. So he talks about the advantage that we're going to have going into AI are the ones that are going to have the most advantage while using this new technology or new gunpowder rather than blowing up your face. How are you going to be and learn the skill sets of asking sharper questions and making smarter decisions and weighing the human value around it and collaboration, a lot of these kind of human-based tool sets to modify or use or mold the technology in a way that doesn't blow up in our face.
Yeah. And, as we talked about in the last episode, if AI can be poisoned by 250 documents, you need a human layer of critical thinking and questioning on top of it to get to the right answer.
And I don't think a lot of people or enough people are talking about the human aspect of it. A lot of times we've been talking about it internally in that, and you think the valuations of all these AI companies and all those folks are pushing it so much. And the best case scenario is going to be what this is. But I don't think a lot of folks are really understand the human aspect of it around just the consumer behavior or the adoption behavior. I think people are underestimating the fact that it takes a long time for humans to really want to do something different. And so it may not be tomorrow that this happens. It may actually end up taking 10 years for people to get it into their head or learn how to use it or whatever the case may be. So there's this pushing and pulling about how fast and the adoption. And I just inherently think that humans in general take a little longer to come around to some of this kind of stuff, especially game-changing stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And that may not be a bad thing. I heard at a conference I was at a couple weeks ago, people describing AI as like it's in its infant state. It's not even yet a toddler, let alone elementary school. So we're getting promises of, oh, hey, it's in college, trust it. But maybe we shouldn't. So it is a push and pull on the human side, on the technology side. It's very interesting. Lots of sparks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the skill set that's going to be most valuable is your ability to adapt.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, our second article is from The Hollywood Reporter, and it's YouTube just ate TV. It's only getting started. So, The Hollywood Reporter talks a little bit about the rise of YouTube and how effectively it is becoming the TV of today. And it is changing the dynamics of basically all media, podcasts, and other things. And how is this going to affect the world?
I have to say, in a coincidence of timing, was flipping through Instagram last night, and the Detroit Lions put out a little video, and it has one of their players talking to a kid who looked like he was probably 6, and the player's like, "Hey, what cartoons do you watch?" And the kid was like, "What cartoons? What are you talking about?" He's like, "I watch YouTube." And the player was like, "No, cartoons. What cartoons?" And you just saw this player who's probably like maybe 24, like just crumble into a pile of ancient dust. He's like, "Dude, I am not that old. What do you mean you don't watch cartoons?" And I thought it was just such a perfect encapsulation of what the article talks about of YouTube is taking over not just TV, but entertainment. And there are still places it's wading into. The article talks about how it's trying to get into scripted series, or creators are trying to get into scripted entertainment, but it is remarkable, just the numbers in the article and what it talks about.
I think Scott Galloway and Kara Swisher on Pivot, one of their most recent episodes, they were talking about, well, where do you get your news? And it's like, well, I get it from the New York Times or the Economist or whatever. And they started having a conversation. It's like, well, not really. I mean, that's the ultimate source, but I actually get it from Instagram or YouTube. And, that's where I'm actually consuming the news. It's not from the people or the normal places where you would get that before, being chopped up and put into, microdoses all around your different streams. And how's that going to change how we fundamentally learn about things? How do we
Mhm.
find and communicate? How do we learn? I know my son, he's on YouTube all the time when he wants to learn and whatever new skill it is. You can pop whatever you want into the channel, and somebody's figured out how to do whatever XYZ thing you need to learn. And it helped him to quickly learn how to do the Rubik's Cubes, for example.
It is truly an amazing technology, an amazing company, so democratizing so many things, like ushering in change in so many areas. And it was eye-opening to read the article and see the magnitude of what they're
Absolutely.
doing.
And we'll see how that continues to play out. Obviously, Google, they were very smart to buy a while back and continues to pay dividends for them moving forward. The last article is from The Generalist, and it's called Lesser Apes. As AI gets smarter, will we get dumber? David Krakauer, president of the Santa Fe Institute, in this article makes a distinction between competitive cognitive artifacts and complementary ones. And talking about examples, so like the abacus is a classic complementary artifact. It doesn't actually calculate on your behalf, but it amplifies your abilities. And his argument is that AI is actually kind of the opposite of that. Consumer AI interfaces, they want to come to the goal and give you the answer. And what are we losing if we start losing that muscle and the ability to, not be complementary to help us, but be competitive against it?
Yeah, I thought it was so interesting, that framing of not thinking with you, but thinking for you, and the importance of so many activities that we do in school, but then also in our early jobs and working life, where you're doing mind numbing work like summarizing a meeting. But in the process of summarizing that meeting, you're learning synthesis, you're learning how to write, really tight sentences. You're building a lot of foundational skills, and the AI is just taking notes for you. Are you learning that? So it was very interesting to think of AI that way. There was something else that was in the article that really just kind of felt like a gut punch, talking about how AI is pulling everything in, but the article says it must stay within its distribution. It is searching for the center, not the edge. And it just made me think about, again, several episodes ago, we talked about why is design all starting to look the same. And as more and more innovators are using AI for brainstorming and ideation, coming up with ideas, it's always going to bring you to the middle, not to the edge. And especially in creative endeavors, we need to be at the edge.
And I've been hearing more contradictory advice around this. Like some folks are saying, hey, think for yourself first and then use AI to augment it. And, from that perspective, I've heard other folks that they first go to AI to start the engine. And then based on that, then they can go and actually think differently. I don't know which is the best at this point. I've gone back and forth on how, depending on the project, whether I go to AI first to generate some things versus thinking about what I need to do and then going to the AI to help on that particular path. And it may be different for each particular thing that you're trying, but I think we are in that experimentation mode where we don't know what's the best way to use it. And our goal is to experiment, try, and try to figure out how it works and how it works best.
It is that question of how does it work best? When do you use it in a process? What do you use it for? We're a little bit more advanced in our careers, Brian, you and I. We've gone through the formative phases. And, I think the article mentions about how students aren't being assigned entire books anymore. They're being assigned summaries. And so it's not just an AI issue, it's kind of this bigger issue of where are we teaching people to think now? Where are we giving them the training that builds the thinking skills that allow us to constructively interact with AI and not get dumber? So it raised a lot of really great questions and ended with a lot of really great encouragements, especially my favorite one is like, go be bored. I'm like, yes, absolutely.
I was reading a different article talking about how today's younger generation, their default state is anxiety versus when our default state as a kid was boredom. And how does that affect what you do and how you do it? If your default state is boredom and you've got to figure something else out versus I'm living in a constant state of anxiety because everything is figured out for me and I have no downtime to think and no downtime to explore, experiment, or try different things.
Yeah, I mean, if we weren't bored, we would never know that the floor is made of lava and how to get around in a situation like that. I mean, it may be spurred later on anxiety skills. If the floor is made of lava, we have a problem. But come on, boredom led to a lot of fun games.
All right. Well, now we're on to our next segment called Tactics to Try. This week, I'm going to throw out a tactic about how do you map your network? I'm always thinking about like, who am I interacting with and what am I learning from these folks? And so one of the things I've been looking at is I've been going onto my LinkedIn and I'm going through the last 50 to 100 people that I've connected with in the last 3 to 4 months. And what can I learn from that? Where am I meeting these folks? Are they in the same industry? Are they the same location? Do I have any outliers? And then taking a proactive approach and saying, okay, for the next 3 months, how can I remap this network? Or who else do I need to include it into it? Or am I getting too bogged down in a particular industry? I need to find some friends or colleagues or folks that can talk to me about, something else. And so it's just, a little tactic to try. Go back to your LinkedIn, take a look at the last 50 people that you've actually linked into and start seeing what you can learn from that.
I love that. And it's such great advice. And I went totally the opposite direction. As you were going out, connecting with the world, reconnecting with people, I went inward. And so, inspired by that last article that we talked about, towards the end, as I said, there was this great sentence that we must, each of us, cultivate a feral intellect. And one of the ways to do that, to cultivate a feral intellect, was to read a difficult book. So I started reading, went back to grade school, Huckleberry Finn, because I was going to read James, but I'm like, I don't remember anything from Huckleberry Finn, so I'll pair the two books together. So I've gone back, I'm reading Huckleberry Finn, and one, I can't believe they let us read that book in school about
It is on the
about a
banned book
kid
list for many city.
a kid who essentially goes feral. That would have just given us way too many ideas. And I also love that we were assigned that book to read. So yes, I am endeavoring to cultivate a feral intellect by basically reading books I had to read in junior high. And I would
Absolutely.
encourage others to do that too.
I would say it's not 100% divergent from what I was thinking. It's just taking, rather than going outside to talking to real humans, just going inside to learn and talk to humans in different environments that aren't necessarily always into.
Yes. Different places and times.
Exactly. Excellent. Well, that's another episode of Inside Outside Innovation. Look forward to hosting you next time and look forward to having everybody back here to talk about innovation. So thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
That's it for another episode of Inside Outside Innovation. Today's episode was produced and engineered by Susan Steibel. If you want to learn more about our teams, our content, our services, check out insideoutside.io, or if you want to connect with Robyn Bolton, go to milezero.io. And until next time, Go out and innovate.